Hi, friends. Good morning and good evening, or whatever you are. Good day to you all. We are in a new episode of the War on China, and today we are going to be talking with Mr. Mario Cavolo about, well, the power cuts slash power shortages that are taking place in northeast China. We're going to talk about the reasons for that. We're going to talk about the consequences of that, and we're going to talk about, what is it to be expected of what is taking place. So I'll start with a very quick hello to all the subscribers and the new subscribers, and those of you who happen to just come across this video. Welcome to our show. Welcome to our channels. And Mr. Mario, how are you today?
And good morning, Mr. Ma. Yeah. Good morning, Fernando. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Cup of coffee. It's a beautiful day here in Northeast China, except for a couple of problems like power rationing. There's
Yeah.
there's some weird stuff going on we're going to talk about today.
I think that this is one of the first things that we all need to talk about, and we need to address, because a lot of people well, they like to call it power shortages, as in there is not enough power out there. What in fact we are seeing is power rationing, as you said, power cuts. But there's an element of deliberate decision to cut down power usage for industrial areas. A very important thing to note is that residential areas are not affected. Have you had any power cuts at home, Mario? Because you are in Shenyang, you're in the Northeast.
No. And so no need to explain further. It's not something that they're focusing on residential. That's the last thing that they're doing. It's not about that. So go ahead, continue.
Sure. Well, what they're trying to do has got to do with this particular video that I would like to show you. Give me one short second. Let's play this. I know you're going to like this one, Mario.
There is no planet B. There is no planet blah. Blah, blah, blah. Blah, blah, blah. This is not about some expensive, politically correct green act of bunny hugging or blah, blah, blah. Build back better, blah, blah, blah. Green economy, blah, blah, blah. Net zero by 2050, blah, blah, blah. Net zero, blah, blah, blah. Climate neutral, blah, blah, blah. This is all we hear from our so-called leaders.
Well, guess what, Miss Greta? There's no blah, blah, blah here. They're actually taking steps, taking action. Mario, go on. What's your comment on Miss Greta?
Yeah, I don't want to say this, and it's not really about Miss Greta. Mankind is doomed. We're doomed, buddy. And I wanted to take the show this morning to inform all of you that we're doomed. Did I drink my coffee now? I mean, what? Hi, folks. Hi, folks, I love you. I do. I'm speaking the truth. We're doomed. We're going to go the way of the dinosaurs. It's done. It's too late. I need to be very clear about this. I'm not being a conspiracy theorist mongerer or whatever that's called. I'm not being a rhetorical person saying crazy things like, Jesus, he's coming back now. I'm not saying it. I'm not saying any of that stuff. I don't talk like that. I don't think like that. I don't act like that. But we are doomed. And that's what I am saying. And that's incredible that it's coming out of my mouth. Okay. Because we are. The problem is we just don't know when. And climate, and I'm serious. I'm serious. In fact, everybody can sit and go, whoa, wait a minute. Yeah. Mario, you're right. Okay. I mean, look what they were saying about climate change. I'm going to tell you two things about the climate change situation, and that just because we're doomed, and we are, doesn't mean that the countries of the world don't need to act to try and do something about climate change. That's a worthy goal, but it doesn't matter. We're doomed anyway. So there's two things about that I want to say to make sure you understand. I want to prove my point. And that's why we named the show what we named it. The price to save mankind is not really the price to save mankind, but the price to delay mankind's doom. Because at best, that's what we're going to do. Okay. Um, Number one, does these climate change and weather and temperature issues seem to matter? Let's ask that question. I'm not Greta Thunberg. And by the way, all of you know I've never been a climate green advocate. We have to save the planet now. I'm not one of those. I'm also, I was on the edge of conservatism of being a climate change denier, where I'm like, well, it's weather. It's the weather, folks. And over the years, weather changes. Uh, I told people that here in Shenyang, it used to be cool in the summer times. And over the last decade or so, my mother-in-law who lives here, and that's always your best statistic, right? Your mother-in-law has said, oh, the summer, really, the summers in Shenyang have gotten hotter. She's like, we never used to get 36, 38 in Shenyang. And a few years in the past, there's been a few, like 10 days in the summertime here in Shenyang where it's hit 36, 38. And my mother-in-law's going, that never used to happen. And she's lived here all of her life. She's in her 70s, right? This is her hometown. But this past summer was a cooler summer, literally. So last summer was hot here in Shenyang. Again, Northeast China, folks. And this summer was cooler. And it was. So I can't explain it, right? So, but that's not what I want to talk about. What I want to talk about is what did happen that we know something's going on with the atmosphere of the Earth. Okay. Well, we know that the sun. Oh, I can't remember the technical words for this. The sunspots, the solar flares, that whole big long sun cycle. Oh my gosh, I can't remember the terminology for it. The solar flares, the sun cycle, that's currently in a lull, which will cause the cooling of the Earth. We know about that too. Just Google what I wrote what I wrote. It's easy, what I just said. But what are we witnessing that tells us that yes, climate is changing? We've had worldwide extreme weather. And that's what I want to say. We have had this crazy flooding in Zhengzhou. We had this deep, before that, what comes to mind is the insanity of the deep freeze that occurred in Texas. That was insane.
Mm-hmm.
That was like historically bananas territory. That was like Batman. Holy guacamole, Batman. It's the Joker. You know, I mean, it's in that territory. So that was Texas. We had other flooding in southern China last year. We had the Zhengzhou incident where, Fernando, you and I can't believe the subway car was up to here with water.
Yeah.
I mean, that knowing what a subway system is, that was beyond belief, right? And then we had flooding in Germany. And then there was something else. I don't remember who, what, where. Oh, there was a huge flooding thing in Myanmar, actually, a few years back. So there is extreme weather, extreme temperature plunges. There's the melting of the permafrost, which is releasing methane. This is a fact. So these things are happening. So what I'm telling you is we're doomed. And the reason we're doomed, and I'm sorry this is taking a little longer than I wanted it to, is because you need to understand something else. The Paris Accord Agreement was a massive 100% failure. No country in the Paris Accord Agreement met its goals and is bragging about meeting its goals. It was a complete and total disaster. No country did anything to stop CO2 from doing this. No country did anything. Follow me. This is very important. No country stopped CO2 from doing this, and CO2 has done this. CO2 is now here. We're done. We're doomed. It's too late. There's no reversing it. Shh. Go, Fernando.
Well, I was talking to my brother who is an environmentalist, and he works on a lot of protection issues related to the environment. And he was saying that we have passed the point of no return. So what Mario is saying is very much true. It is going to be a very difficult transition to accommodate to the new realities of life, to the new realities of this new climate that we have created. But that doesn't mean that the objectives of trying to adapt to this new reality on Earth should be abandoned. We just saw Xi Jinping speak at the United Nations and reveal that there's not going to be any more work in terms of building coal power plants anywhere around the world as part of China's plan to, well, cut down on carbon emissions. And if you look back at what China has been doing, I know that nobody has met the goals. The fact that the United States removed itself from the Paris Accord, the fact that the Paris Accord was seen as weak and not exactly um, binding. Yeah, like this is just suggestions. That was probably a mistake. But let's not take away from what China has been doing, for example, in terms of afforestation and reforestation of deserts and places like that, that are going to help China look more green from space, for example, and the effects that that has on the environment, on temperature, on oxygen, on CO2, all these things. That's an extremely important thing to consider. The job that has been done in that regard, the amount of work that has been done in building dams, in building electric power, wind power and solar power stations. They are all over the northwest, all over China, essentially, these huge wind turbines that now in the northeast, for example, they account for, if I'm not mistaken, 18% of the total output of power in the region. Wind power. So, what other countries are doing what China is doing? That's a very good question to ask. But the other thing that is extremely important to consider is China is the factory of the world. And as such, is going to produce more CO2 than the other countries that are really outsourcing all the manufacturing to China. And pointing fingers at China is just not fair. Sorry, Mario.
Of course, Fernando, obviously, let's clarify this incredibly important point that China's per capita output of pollution is low. The worst polluter on planet Earth, I hate to say this. I don't, I'm getting so tired of sounding like I'm anti American when I'm not anti American, because I'm not anti American. But the
Mm,
world's worst polluter is the United States. The second world's worst, per capita, the amount of pollution put out by per person by the United States is triple the amount of pollution put out by a Chinese person. And the second world's worst polluter, I can't believe this. I don't want to be anti-American. I'm not anti-American. Is the U.S. military? They have more pollution. They put out more pollution than a country. So this is what's really going on. The Paris Accord was irrelevant. Okay, I want to say this to you very, very clearly. All right, is the United States doing a lot of stuff, a lot of initiatives to reduce pollution? Yes. Is China doing a lot of initiatives to reduce pollution? Uh, no, that's not even close to describing what China's doing to reduce pollution. China's doing like 5 times more in terms of investment and initiatives than any other country on planet Earth to reduce pollution. Okay, you need to know that. So the world, I want to say, didn't need a Paris Accord, right? Because every major country is just going to go ahead and do whatever it's going to do anyway. And in the case of China, China is more committed and invested more by far than any other country in reducing pollution worldwide. And you know about Xi Jinping's latest initiatives to be carbon neutral by XX date, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
yeah, there's the idea of reducing carbon emission by 2030 by a certain amount. And well, a lot of this power rationing and power cuts, which are intentional, are geared toward reaching that objective. Now, a lot of people say, oh, if you're in China, you cannot criticize China. Well, here we are talking about something that China is doing that's having enormous consequences, not only for China, for the jobs, for the people, but for the rest of the world. One thing that I want to show you is, in light of what I'm just saying, that people say, oh, you can't criticize the government. Here is Chinese media questioning what the government is doing. Tell me, Mario.
Yeah, just you can't say in China, this is what you can't do, and thank God you can't do it. People think I'm just. By the way, Fernando, I'm just validating your comment here, folks. one of the purposes of government is to run and provide the rules and laws backbone of society. Everybody okay with that? Do you want your government to do that? I
Of
do,
course.
right? Everybody needs and wants their government to do that to whatever degree. You want to argue for less government? That's fine, but well, then definitely don't move to China. Okay, but it isn't a bad thing if the government is doing its job. And the point of the matter is that I want to say is that the government doing its job is the government being responsible to create the structure to do what needs to be done. And that includes creating and maintaining stability and harmony in the society to protect all citizens from a lack of stability and harmony in society, like violence and other chaos and disruptions and anarchy. And so you can talk about any of the issues that has to do with what the Chinese government is doing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Here's what you can't do in China. You say, well, you're not allowed to criticize the government in China. It's completely not true. But what you're not allowed to do is be like the following. You're not allowed to go out on the street with a street sign and say, and make a ruckus and say, Xi Jinping is a big jerk. He's a monster and I hate him and we need to replace him. Rah! We need to replace him. Rah! You can't do that in China. Congratulations. You're right. You can't. You're absolutely right. Do you know why? Because of what I just explained to you. If you went out on the street to do that, you would cause
Disrupt
disruption.
harmony.
You would disturb your neighbors. You say, oh, I have the right to do that. I have the right to march on the streets and scream that the Chinese government sucks and she's a jerk and we have to replace him now, blah, whatever. Yes, folks, you're absolutely, listen, you're absolutely
That's not
right.
happening here in China. Let me
Not
show
allowed-
you how it's done. Let me
And
show
I'm
you
so
how it's done. Watch this.
What we are seeing right now.
There has been a lot of administrative measures being used in terms of cutting the coal-powered energy station, and also in terms of cutting back using coal as the energy source. But whether that is being done in the right measure, with the right pace, in the right direction, some say that is questionable. Your take?
So let me remove this 1 second. As you can see, there is the possibility to asking people, all right, is this the right move? Is this the right thing to do? Like, for example, a lot of the power cuts that we've seen have been done without the proper communication down the line to the chain of supply, which is affecting some people. So that needs to be tweaked. That needs to be adjusted. That doesn't take away from the very important role of reducing consumption of power and energy to meet the goals. Now, what is really of interest to me in a world and geopolitical perspective is what, well, we have been doing, Western countries, to the solar industries of Xinjiang. Solar is a very important part of the future. We are living through, well, the end of fossil fuels. We will see fossil fuels come to an end. It's a limited resource on which we have banked our society, our mankind's existence is supported and based on fossil fuels, a limited quantity. So how do we come out of this? How do we detach ourselves from this dependency on a limited amount of fossil fuels? Well, we need to transition into alternative sources of power. And one of the most important ones, one of the most affordable ones, one of the most reliable ones is solar power. But now that they have been banning some of the largest producers of solar panels in China and in the world, in Xinjiang, well, what is the world going to do? A lot of people like to look at it as this is China's revenge. We're going to upset the logistical um, supply chain of the world and just take care of our own industries, our own energy supply, and meet our goals. Do you see it like that, Mario?
Uh, yes, and I must add one more point, which is that it's why is it about the electricity savings and this transition into the new world, and what is China's goal here? Why are they power rationing? By the way, they're power rationing in many provinces across the country. There's a lot of factories up here in China in the northeast, including, well, and then of course down in Guangdong as well. But there's a focus up here in the northeast. That's particularly important because of the fact that, for example, the northeast is the seat of automotive here in China. I'm in Shenyang. BMW is here. Many auto suppliers up in the north, auto suppliers, Chinese suppliers to BMW, BBA, and other automotive that's happening up here. So it's a big deal. It's a big deal because it represents a huge economy, a huge tax base, and huge investment on the part of the EU in cooperation with China. So there's a lot going on here. And in that regard, you need to know that the power rationing is being called, some people have suggested to me that it's being called a slap. It's being used as a stick for the polluters. So what's gone on is a lot of companies have followed the energy requirements, the energy related emission requirements. A lot of factories up here have been following that. I'm using Northeast as an example because I'm up here, here I am. And it's a big, important story because we're at the root. It's the source. By the way, it's also the Chinese cultural history source of China as well. Shenyang was the center of China back in the Qing dynasty. This is the seat of the country. People don't realize that. So what's going on is that, for example, let's say you want to be a factory supplier to some bigger company, such as BMW or some other big company. That big company comes along and says, is your factory in compliance with check, 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 check? Is your factory a clean factory in the way it's running and operating? Does it have all of these standards installed? So that's incredible what I just told you. That's the degree to which the Chinese government is enforced laws and regulations to make it to make the country greener. That's an incredible commitment, what I just told you. So you have to meet all those requirements in order to be a supplier to our company. Wow. So that's tough on the economic side, but right, that means the cost of doing things goes higher. It makes it more difficult to do business. It's like in America, my brother, he's great, many, many years. He owns a restaurant. When the health inspector has a list of 5 pages long of health inspection things that you need to meet, you don't meet those things, you can't do business. So it's the same thing. So China is doing all of that. They're doing all of this. Very strict. Okay. So what's happening though is the big old SOEs of China, the bigger, older factories, the ones that the ones that you can't shut down, they're lazy, they're slow, they're not in compliance. You with me? They're lazy, they're slow, they're not in compliance. And now China's come along and said, wait a minute, we are participating in the Glasgow conference next month. We have to show the effort we're making to reduce pollution, and that has been demonstrably excellent, but it's not enough. So we've got to get the pollution cut. We've got to get the pollution cut down, and that's what the power rationing. That's the motivation behind a lot of the power rationing. And when I tell you the next reason why all this is happening, your mind is going to be blown. It's because China's economy is doing so well. Whoa. What are you talking about? Fernando, I think I said it to you yesterday when we were preparing. China's export economy has boomed. Many parts of China's economy has boomed. in the past year and a half because of the pandemic, partially because of the pandemic, the PPE and medical economy, other things in the world, the supply chain strains and shortages. All of this, I can't say it to you enough. You need to understand how thankful you need to be that China is the factory of the world and has been outputting and sending things out to the world that the world needs during this pandemic. I cannot tell you enough how thankful you need to be that the Chinese government has the virus pandemic under control. Because if it didn't, whatever hard time you're happening over there outside of China would
It
even be
would be
10
10
times.
times more.
You
Mm,
wouldn't even have bread on your table.
mm.
That's an exaggeration. You wouldn't have product. The product shortages and supply chain shortages you're experiencing would be even worse. They're about to get worse anyway, but that's a whole nother. That's an entire other story. So
Now,
the fact. Go ahead, Fernando. Go ahead.
I want to have a comment and bring back this little title, low carbon factory of the world. Here in Guangdong, which used to be known as the factory of the world, basically they are telling factories and companies, you need to start taking fewer orders. You need to start not taking all these orders because we need to meet our CO2 emissions. What is that going to do to the rest of the world? And this is going to tie up to the repercussions for the world. Well, when supply doesn't meet demand, prices are going to go up. Things are going to become much more expensive. And this is why the title of this show was actually The Price of Saving Mankind, the cost of saving mankind. We've been riding this free, or let's not say free, but this cheap energy wave for decades now. I mean, the whole peak oil was supposed to be happening around 2015, but there's been new discoveries, new methods, fracking here, fracking there, doing worse things for the environment, and we keep on not facing reality. When the music stops, the whole slogan of save the planet is absolute crap. And excuse me that I say this word. We are going to have to save mankind. When we disappear from the face of the earth will still be here. We don't need to worry about the earth. We're not saving the earth. We're saving mankind. That's why we titled this video as we did. So things are going to become more expensive. Inflation is going to take over. Things are going to become a lot less available in other countries because China is trying to save mankind. What's your take, Mario?
The price of saving the world is the inflation that's coming. It's unavoidable. It's here. It's already here, and it's going to get a lot worse. And I'm sorry
Mm,
to tell you, that's the reality. That's the price, money. And unfortunately, uh, that's why if countries do not start running themselves, governing themselves on the basis of the common prosperity that she just announced, uh, billions of people who are already left behind are going to be left behind even worse. Okay, there's some examples of this, and if you follow the daisy chain, if you follow the daisy chain with me, folks, if you're not prepared to become very disheartened, upset, and depressed, do not follow my daisy chain right now. Go get off. Don't follow the daisy chain of economics that I'm about to describe, because when I'm done, you're going to be like, oh boy, we are doomed, because we are. So this starts and this will take a minute or two. This starts in the factory. The factory provides the products to the companies that are making your world work. Everybody with me? Good. Okay. Now, the factories have power rationing. Why are the factories in Northeast China experiencing power rationing? To save the world, to reduce pollution, which is what needs to happen. However, we're past the point of no return, so we're just trying to delay the point of no return. We're trying to delay the extinction of the dinosaurs on planet Earth, which is going to be us. We're trying to delay it, okay? And there's a big effort to delay it, so we have power rationing to reduce pollution. Someone even went so far as to say to me that the Chinese government is forcing the polluters who are not in compliance out of business. They're literally going to force them. They're going to cause them to close their factory Because if I shut the power off to your factory, let's say your factory is in non-compliance because you're stubborn and don't want to follow the law, and now we're going to teach you a lesson, right? Carrot and stick. You with me? Now we're going to teach you a lesson. And the lesson we're going to teach you is stick. Bam. We're going to hit you in the back with a stick. We're going to, well, hey, look, sorry, we have to start rationing power to cut pollution because you wouldn't meet the pollution standards. Well, wait, you can't just shut power to my factory. Dude, you're not in compliance. I've been telling you for 3 years. She started this 3 years ago. Okay. He said, get in compliance. He also told Evergrande and the real estate companies, get in compliance with the 3 red lines. Okay, the other ones did, a lot of them did, a lot of them didn't. And the ones who didn't, the ones who were greedy, now they're going to pay. And it starts with Evergrande. Okay, they're getting liquidated. This is what's happening. She ain't bailing them out. So this is just mom. This is your mother saying, do what you were told. And now here's the consequences because you didn't do what you were told. You're a bad son. That's what this is. So they're applying the power rationing to the factory. The factory is going, wah! But there are real world consequences because the product stops. The people have no jobs. The factory is going to go out of business. Well, we already have, and now I get to step 2 of the supply chain. We already have a strained supply chain, don't we? Everybody?
Yeah. The delays at the harbors, at the ports with logistics.
We've got a supply chain nightmare on our hands, folks. Everybody's experiencing it in some different way. European continent, American continent, and Asian continent, China and Asia, not even to mention the global South, Africa and Latin America. So now I'm to phase 2 of the supply chain here. We already have a supply chain disaster in the works that's getting worse. Oh, getting so much worse. Hold on, folks. Hold on. Hold on, folks. Getting so much worse. This morning, I just sent this out because there are now a backlog at the Port of Los Angeles of an overestimated 500 containers sitting in the cargo ships off of Southern California coast. 500. No, Mr. Uncle Mario, I lied. 500,000. 500,000 containers are sitting on cargo ships off the shore of Los Angeles over 60 days. No one's processing.
And this is one of the most important ports in the United States. Am I correct?
Of course. Port of LA, the Port of Los Angeles, Long Beach, Queen Mary, all the romantic stuff. Okay. The romantic edge of everything in life. Everything in life is just becoming everything is becoming a crisis. Okay. So we're at stage 2, supply chain disaster. I just gave you one example. So in addition to a supply chain disaster, we're now adding to the supply chain disaster. Okay. Supply chain disaster, the ports, the shipping lanes across the world. Step 3 in the supply chain, we're doomed disaster, an economic disaster. Folks, a couple years ago, if you wanted to ship a container across the ocean, it cost $1,000 to $2,000, and it took 45 days to 2 months. That price, the cost of shipping, that container now takes 3 months minimum to go across, and the new price is not, say 5,000-6,000 instead of 1,000 to 2,000.
No.
It's up to 14,000.
20,000 in some cases.
Hyperinflation? Is there hyperinflation? Of course, inflation, as the government defines it and tries to tell you not to worry, is when your loaf of bread goes up in price by 5%. That's inflation. 5%, 12%, 6%, 18%. Whoa, 18%, 30%. That's inflation. My ribeye steaks that used to cost $7 a pound now cost $10 a pound. My salmon steaks that used to cost $10 a pound used to cost $15 a pound. Folks, that's only 50% inflation. That's not bad. If you start talking about inflation of 200, 300, 400, 1,000,
thousands,
that's hyperinflation. That's economic screw-up induced. Go ahead.
There are a lot of people who are suggesting that this is we talked about manufactured inflation in the past. America's manufacturing inflation by printing money to uh, take care of the things that need to be taken care, because they've been spending money on wars around the world and not taking care of their infrastructure, their people, their systems to support their way of life. So they are trying to make up by just printing money. But this hyperinflation, does it benefit China or does it hurt China? Remember that China owns a lot of the debt that America has in terms of bonds and securities and things like that. So a, a, a diluted US dollar actually dilutes the amount of assets that China owns from the United States. So this is actually not good for China. It's a way that America arguably deliberately can hurt China. So to try and blame China for what what they're doing right now and put it on all, they're just trying to cause trouble. They're not trying to cause trouble. They're trying to save mankind. Basically, we need to reduce the output. There's all these container ships and all these containers that are not getting that are going to waste with a lot of food, a lot of products, a lot of stuff. Let's scale down, use less energy, less power, less electricity, and be realistic to to what is taking place. They are reacting to what's taking place in the world markets. Um, I want to point out one thing that a lot of people are also saying, and they're trying to blame this on Australian coal. The price of coal has
Small
gone
part
up
of it. Small part of it.
ridiculously amazing. It went from something like 500 yuan per ton to 1,600 yuan per ton. So the price of coal has gone. This is not just China; it's just China getting coal from the world wherever they can get it. So this is not just Australian coal. This is world coal. So why is it getting so expensive, and what are the consequences of this? Mario, what's your take?
Yes, coal is getting more expensive as a consequence of supply chain, and but the Australia contribution to in the China scenario right now is maybe a 15-20% influence. It's not the main reason at all. So don't be blaming uh, that situation. It's not that. Okay. In fact, I have it on good authority that it's not that there's okay. You would say coal is expensive in China. Why would coal prices in China shoot up? Well, obviously because there's a shortage of coal. That's always what would cause what would cause the price of something like coal to go up, right? There's a shortage of it.
Hmm.
And that's not true. There is plenty of coal all over China. There's plenty of coal. Okay, that isn't the issue. The issue is we're back to it again. The reason this is happening is pollution emissions to reduce the underlying backbone of the power rationing in China is to reduce pollution. China's going into the Glasgow conference and they need to show what they're doing. So, in this regard, China's like taking the big fat sledgehammer and slamming it down. And that is China's inefficiency. That is the inefficiency of China government being the authoritarian in charge. They're not doing it in a really smooth, coordinated way. They could be doing it in a more nuanced and more
Hmm.
strategic way.
Gradual way.
Slamming the giant hammer down, and this is the argument. Many people have made this argument, including all over Chinese media, because this is just rational
You just saw
conversation.
it. You just saw it in the video that we played.
Right. You're just discussing how the Chinese government strategically should do this instead of this and this instead of this and this isn't working and this would work better. That's criticism of the government, folks. You're not saying that you hate Xi because he's ugly or whatever. I mean, God, it's just like adults. Be an adult, okay? So we're all trying to be adults here. So that's what's going on with it because again, it's the power rationing. I have to make the third point. I didn't finish making the point that I made, which was why all this is happening. Why is China having to do power rationing to reduce pollution and emissions with the factories? Well, wait a minute. Why did that start in the first place? I mentioned it earlier. I didn't finish the thought. I said because China's economy is doing so well. So because China's manufacturing and factory sector is outputting, exports are up 15, 20%. Whoa, you don't expect that to be the result of the pandemic. China's benefiting from it. But obviously, if exports are up 15 to 20%, that means factory output is up 15 to 20%. You with me? And here we go. Well, that means emissions are up 15, 20%.
Mm-hmm.
China's CO2 emissions are through the roof because China is saving the world, because China
You
is
you
world
cannot
class.
have the cake and eat it at the same time. One
Thank
has
you.
to give. You want output? Well, there's going to be more emissions. You want lower emissions? Then there's going to be lower output. Is that simple? And that's going to cause all the things that are taking place. Like, I can't really connect this directly to what's taking place in England with the petrol, but that is getting ugly. That is getting real ugly. There's a lot of rioting and discontent and lines and people fighting, people attacking each other, huge lines at the gas stations. They say that this has to do with Brexit and the shortage of drivers. There are not enough drivers to drive the lorries that bring the gasoline, the petrol, as they call it over there, to the stations. But
And
Brexit was Nigel Farage's idea and Boris' idea, and what's who is to blame for this particular situation that they're in right now? It's not really connected to China, but I just wanted to throw it out there. The incompetence of leadership over there is causing problems locally. China is trying to fix issues globally. Mario.
yes, and because I just this just caught my attention, and it speaks exactly to what we're saying. And again, this is the indicator of we're doomed. We're doomed. They've been lying to you. They've been trying to tell you we're not doomed, but we're doomed. And it's Fed Chair Powell. Fed Chair Powell. What did he spend the last 6 months doing? Telling you, oh no, well we're going to start. We're going to start tapering. We're going to start tapering. No, no, they can't start tapering. And now they have a huge problem. No, no, listen. Inflation, we recognize the inflation which has occurred. However, the inflation is transitory, temporary, due to the following factors. And we fast forward a few months, and inflation is not transitory, and it's not temporary, and it's getting worse. And the supply chain is about to collapse. That's another headline on the front of CNN. Okay, workers warn supply chain is about to collapse. Okay, this is what's really going on. And now we got Fed Chair Powell this morning, CNBC headline on the left. Fed Chair Powell calls inflation frustrating.
I want
Now,
to bring
folks,
out this question from one of our viewers. We normally don't do this, but I think that this is part of what we're trying to save mankind for move for what the US is going through with its devaluation of its political, social, and financial structural foundation that's bringing incremental chaos to the global economy. Will China save us? That's a very interesting question. Well, China is doing what it has to do for its own economy, for its own people, and for its own reserves and natural assets. Now, they're also concerned and understanding that, thi- again, we need to do something in order to curb CO2 emissions and try to fight this climate change. Again, as we said earlier, Mario said we're doomed. My brother, who's an expert in environment, says we're past the CO2 emissions. There's no point of return. We just need to adjust. We need to adapt to a new reality and try to slow down the, 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 the decaying situation that we're in, the really precarious situation that we're in. Now, China will not deliberately go out and save one country. China will try and go out and do what they need to do to save the earth. But the unfair assessment here is the pointing finger by China haters saying, oh, you see, China's contributing to CO2 to this level, to that level. China is, as we said before, the factory of the world. It is normal that it will have more CO2 emissions. And the fact that the CO2 emissions of China are not 10 times what they are is because they're doing so much to curb it down, to curtail those emissions. Imagine if China were not doing what it is doing, what the situation would be like. Now, there's more work to do. There's a lot more. I mean, one thing that I will throw into the middle of this conversation: EVs. The EV network of China is the largest in the world. The EV fleet in China is the largest in the world. And what are other countries doing related to this? So like, oh, it's kind of fancy. It's kind of like, oh, but I like my internal combustion engine car. I like the boom boom. Well, you can't stay in technologies of the past when we need to face new realities on Earth, on this planet. It's not save the planet, it's save mankind. Mario, um, do you have any other comments that you would like to address, or should we look at wrapping up today's video?
No,
Tell me.
we're going because I didn't finish the daisy chain of doom yet. Okay,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
we've got I
Daisy
got to
chain.
finish the third step in the daisy chain of doom is the shortages. Okay, so I've covered the first 2 points. We've got the ships at 14,000 per container. We've got the shortages that are already happening. The shortages are about to get worse. Okay, now, okay, what's the fourth thing in the daisy chain of trouble? Well, it's what's existed for 20 years that is now finally coming back, and people are going, okay, obviously the situation is completely out of control. When they first, which is the Fed bailing out the rich people and the bankers, but not the people. And
Mm.
and then she, in contrast, as if to show how crazy it is, showing the world that they're not going to bail out Evergrande. They're letting Evergrande liquidate. Period. Period. They're not bailing out Evergrande. It couldn't be clearer. Evergrande just sold off another 1.5 billion asset to pay its bonds. It's liquidating. The government is not bailing them out or bailing them out, supporting them, supporting actions that they take in order to
Hmm.
stabilize, rationalize whatever's there to minimize damage, which they're not letting the people who caused all the damage get away with it, and they're not bailing them out and letting them continue making millions in salaries like Jamie Dimon and all these other guys who, excuse me, I shouldn't use a specific name, but all those guys that were in Obama's office and got bailed out, who instead should have actually been thrown in jail. Okay, so we see China doing and showing the world the exact opposite of what the United States is doing, and that's the third part of the daisy chain of doom. Okay, because what we now have is, remember, when they first bailed out after the 2008-9 financial crisis, when the Fed first started coming out with this idea of buying its own of America buying its own bonds because nobody else will. The
Mm.
Fed's own bank buying its own bonds. So I'm not describing it like an economic analyst, forgive me, because nobody else will. This was like crazy. We're going to buy our own bonds. I mean, this is like lending your own money to yourself to
Yeah,
buy
putting
your
it
own.
from one pocket and putting it in the other.
And when they started doing that, I think everybody was shocked. Everybody was like, "Whoa." Well, to what degree? Like 40, 50, it was like 30, 40, 50 trillion, $1 billion a month in FOMO, whatever they call it, Fed purchases, whatever. It was 30, 40, 50 billion. And back then, everyone thought that was insanity and would, send the world off the cliff because you can't do that. Even Warren Buffett said it. Fast forward 10 years, and that is exactly where we
Where
are.
they
The
are.
Fed purchases, the Fed bond purchases are now up to 3 times that amount, $120 billion a month to support all the rich white collar people. And it's gotten so bad. Now it's caused the imbalances in the system. The inflation's going to hyperinflation in certain pockets, like the
Certain
supply chain,
industries.
right? It's called vertical in certain vertical parts of the economy. You got hyperinflation while you've got the Fed telling you inflation is under control and it's transitory. And you're just like, and they're lying to you. So now here we are at the third part of the chain, to the point where they've taken this system, this the global economy, which you cannot disagree that the America's in the center of it, because the dollar is the world's currency reserve, and the SWIFT system forces the whole world to transact transactions through the SWIFT system in US dollars, the petrodollar. So you can't argue that the United States is the center of the earth here, man. That's the century, and it's coming to an end, and it is, and that's the problem because it's deteriorating. So it's gotten to the point where finally, and the pandemic came along to shine a light on, that's a flashlight pointing downward. The pandemic came along to shine a light on all of this. Okay, so now you have a situation where they're like going, all right, well, look, we did a good thing. We made Bezos worth $200 billion, and Gates and Dorsey and Zuckerberg and, oh, let's not forget Elon Musk and all these guys. And hey, these guys are worth $100 billion, $200 billion. Rah, rah, capitalism, rah, rah, America. Isn't that amazing? And someday, if you do the right thing and come up with the right idea, you can be worth $100 billion too, or at least 10 billion. I mean, and people did not understand. I mean, and not understand the cognitive dissonance insanity of this. While 100 million people at the bottom end of society are increasingly going into a life of disaster. The streets of LA, New York, all over the country, Seattle, Portland, people living on the street, and the government doing what? Nothing until they finally, and I said this years ago, and now what are they doing? Welfare. Stimmies. They call it stimmies, right? Stimulus.
Give me another. Give me another.
Right. The 120. So this is. I have to finish the thought real quick. The 120 billion goes to the companies and to the rich and the white collar folks who are earning $5-6 million a year. That's socialism, welfare for the rich, but capitalism for the poor, right? But now they are doing socialism for the poor. If we're going to do 120 billion per month in tapering, which cannot end, by the way, if it ends, everything goes kaboom. I want to be very clear about that. They cannot end the 120 billion of tapering. The stock market is about to crash right now. Anyway, if they end 120 billion, the stock market will end. It's over. Go, please get a tent, move into the woods, buy warm clothes. Right. There's not, it will collapse. Okay. So now what they're doing is they're saying, and I get to my conclusion of step 3 in the daisy chain of doom, phase 3. They must continue supporting the upper end, the stock market, 120 billion a month in tapering. But now they have to add an additional 30-40 billion a month in stimmies for the poor people. So now it's welfare. So now it's UBI. Call it what you want. Call it welfare. Call it, whatever you want to call it.
Handouts.
It's handouts. Call it what you want. Doesn't matter. Let me ask you a question. Do you think that someone living in Los Angeles who has to pay $3,000 a month in rent should be entitled to welfare from the government? Wait a minute. Isn't welfare for poor people who can't afford rent? The idea of welfare was that it's for poor people. You see what I mean? Well,
but you've created poor people. You've increased the line of poverty when you are considered poor, even though you're paying $3,000 rent in LA.
So the reason you're considered poor is because you don't have any money. But the reason you don't have any money is because the best job you can get can only pay $2,500 a month, but your rent is $3,000 a month. That's why you're poor. That's why you can claim welfare and get support from the government. So you got, again, Bernie Sanders pointed this out. You got Amazon workers claiming support, government support, and all different kinds of government support because they can't pay their bills, put their kids through education, while Bezos is earning millions per year and worth 200 billion. So you have the government paying Bezos's workers so that he can be worth $200 billion.
It's the system that does some work.
You want to scream. It's welfare for the wealthy. And this is now the mainstream society. The daisy chain of doom, phase 3. Fernando?
So guys, I want to finish this video by showing you this clip one more time. And to all the haters out there who say that you cannot criticize China, China listens to its people. Watch this one more time, and I'll see you at the end before we say goodbye.
We are what we are seeing right now.
There has been a lot of administrative measures being used in terms of cutting the coal-powered energy station, and also in terms of cutting back using coal as the energy source. But whether that is being done in the right measure, with the right pace, in the right direction, some say that is questionable. Your take?
So that's to you, China haters. This person is not going to jail. This person is allowed to voice her opinion, her criticism, her ideas about what the government is doing, and that is okay here in China. So take it, shut up, and change the topic of your channels. All right, guys, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for watching, and remember, give it a thumbs up if you like this video. Make sure to hit the like button, subscribe, and leave a comment. And if you want to support the work that we do, you can do it by hitting the links in the description down below. And well, until we see you again with another War on China episode, that has been Mario and Fair Movie. Until we see you again, take it easy. Bye for now, Mario.
Hi, folks.